But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you.
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters. It is Thursday night, so it is time to welcome Malcolm MacDonald and John Gibson to the show. How are you, lads?
All right, thanks, Steve. How are you doing, John?
Nice to see you, Mal.
Good to see you guys. As always, we'll start with the last game that we played, and it was a defeat. And for an hour of the game, Mal, we did okay against Manchester United, but after that, it was another second half surrender.
Well, yes, but at the same time, I thought for the first half an hour in particular, Manchester United were absolutely hopeless. And when you're the opposing side, particularly when you're playing away from home, you have to sniff that out. You have to recognise it, and that's when you really push on. But Newcastle never troubled the Man United goal, really, in that time. And and you know that Man United are going to get better. Somebody's going to boot them up the backside at half time or whatever, and they'll come out a different side. And so when the opportunity is there, you have to take it. And I just didn't feel that the team generally recognised that. They played quite well, but without threat. And you've got to have a threat, particularly in this division. The Premiership, it's a harsh level to be playing at, and if you don't take your chances and make the most of a period when you're on top, then you're always going to get beat. And Man United, well, they came back. I wasn't particularly overly impressed with them over the whole 90. And I thought Newcastle played some lovely football at times. But, and I'm not sure about the team selection in the first place, because you've got Joe Linton on the right, who cannot get a shot at goal for love nor money. You've got, and then you've got the other forwards. You've got Sir Maximin wide on the left, and then Almiron. He's sort of running all over the place, but he's not achieving. And I just feel that somebody at Newcastle, they need to get him focused. They really do. And we've seen that he can get beyond back fours. He can get into the penalty area. He's got a good shot on him. But so many games, I think you're running about like a crazy fella, and there's no real thinking going on. And that's what struck me against Man United. The opportunity was there and not taken. And it needed Man United to go ahead before Newcastle sparked off in the box. And then it was only the one chance that St Maximin scored from. And from there, nevertheless, I felt that Newcastle just went downhill steadily through to the final whistle.
John, what was your take on the game of the weekend? I mean, Old Trafford's not a happy hunting ground for us at the best of times. And when we're struggling without a striker, it was always going to end in a defeat, I think.
I think it was, but I mean, I agree with totally what Malcolm said. I thought Manchester United, by their standards, were average to poor, particularly in the first half, and probably only average in the second. Once again, when you think about it, boys, we virtually gifted them all 3 goals. I mean, Kraft was done on the first one on Rashford's run, and Darlow was beaten at his near post. On the second one, Lewis had been sucked into the centre of goal, and the ball went in beneath his feet out to the guy standing inside right, who was completely and utterly unmarked, and Willock brought the guy down for a penalty for the third. So the 3 goals were sacrificed by us rather than created by them. And we're getting the usual thing after winning at Everton when the performance was terrific throughout the 90 minutes. And by the way, I've got a theory with that, is that we went out there to go on the front foot, and we remained on the front foot because we never went behind. We were never a goal behind. We kept the goal for 90 minutes and win. Once we go a goal behind, all the life is sucked out of us. We don't believe. We collapse like a pack of cards, and we get what's coming to us. And that happened at Manchester United. We have no cutting edge. The spirit died. That was the first thing. The second thing is, and we know it without Callum Wilson, we had no cutting edge whatsoever. I think we've got to rely so heavily. There's 2 people auditioned for the job, for Wilson's job. One was Dwight Gale in the first game, although he tactically was played in a way that doesn't suit him, but he had the audition and then was jettisoned. Then they bring Joe Linton in and he has the audition. He'll probably be jettisoned this week, and Carroll will get the audition. The bottom line is nobody can do that job. So the only hope we've got when we look forward to, I think, 4 super critical matches about to come up, is that Almiron and San Maximum, somehow between them, can produce enough. They have scored goals. Well, the last home game, Southampton, Almiron got 2. San Maximum finished with a decent goal at Man United. We're going to have to rely on them to get us out of trouble, because goal scoring has been a problem all season. It's a particular problem now. But I thought the match at Manchester United was totally predictable. What wasn't predictable was how poor they were going to be. And I do think they were very rank average.
Yeah.
Missed
Couldn't agree more on that.
Missed opportunity for Newcastle, really, to do something, at least get a point, which would have been very valuable there. Quick one for you, John, on players wise. I mean, we've seen a few photographs coming out in Newcastle's training ground today. Is there any truth Manquillo started training again? Is there a chance he could be back a little bit quicker? And we saw some rather encouraging signs of Callum Wilson on the treadmill.
Yeah, I think, Manquillo will be back quicker than we thought. It's whether he would be back as quick as Wolves. That might be really pushing it. But we might have to push it, because from my point of view, I think the 2 fullbacks are scary. Neither can defend. Kraft is an absolute nightmare. He's involved in giving away a goal every game in which he plays. And while a lot of fans like the look of Lewis, I'm sorry, if you play a flat back 4 and your left back cannot defend, you're in trouble, man. And Lewis can't defend. He was on the second goal. He was in the middle of the goals. The ball ran under his feet to the guy standing at inside right who scored, and that's the guy that Lewis should have been marking, but it got sucked into the middle of the goals. Yeah. He can't defend. He makes mistakes every week that results in a goal. Kraft does exactly the same. We have got major problems in the fullback positions, and Dummett has got to play it in this game, I think, against Wolves, because I'll tell you why. Traore and Pedro Neto are their 2 wingers, and they've come. Traore, we know how dangerous he can be. I mean, he's a big, powerful guy who gets shots off. His form has been sketchy this season. They've won 3 and drawn 1 of the last 4 Premier League games, Wolves, and the 2 wingers who have had a significant change in style. Instead of going wide and trying to hit the byline and get crosses in, they're cutting in to finish. And that's how Traore had this incredible shot against Leeds. It come back off the bar, hit the goalkeeper on the back of the head and went in the net. That was the winner. These 2 guys, considering how our fullbacks are playing, can rip us apart if we don't do something about it. So, and there's no question that defensively, our best two fullbacks are Manquillo and Dummett. Manquillo might not quite be ready for this weekend, but we need him back as soon as we can because Kraft is an absolute embarrassment.
Okay, David Reed keeps asking this question, and it's just the way it works. Sometimes, David, I don't often get to get a chance to get back to the questions. So he's basically asking stick or twist. He says a lot of people are asking the question about Steve Bruce, Malcolm. Should he be sacked? And it ties in a little bit with this question as well that John Askew's asking. If you had a choice of beating Wolves and Brucey staying, or losing to Wolves and Brucey going, which would you take? Dave Reed says, if we do go down that avenue of sacking Bruce, then who would you bring in, and would anybody come in? So it's a bit complex, that, because I've mixed two questions up. But I don't know. Would you fancy losing against Wolves if it meant that Bruce was going to get the sack and somebody came in, and then who would you like, Malcolm?
Yeah, as he says, it's a weird question because I can't see it actually existing in real terms, that situation. I think the owner is prepared to plod on with Steve Bruce, even at the risk of relegation, and to me that's quite frightening. Personally, I think that if Steve Bruce were to go, whoever took over, he would have to overcome so many problems that have come to exist within the dressing room and within the team when they're on the pitch. So many problems that it would need an awful lot of time. If anybody thinks that this can be turned around in 10 games, they're crazy. It needs a hell of a long while. People they're getting into bad habits. I see so much disinterest in so many of the players when they're out on the pitch, and they're playing for Newcastle United. They've got a Newcastle shirt on, and they're disinterested at times, and it just sends me absolutely crazy. I personally think that Mike Ashley is seriously risking taking a huge financial loss by the club getting relegated. And whether a takeover is going to happen once the season's over, I don't know under those circumstances. But I think if he's going to take action, he's got to take action now. And if I were to suggest, they've just brought in this guy from Bournemouth,
Graham Jones.
Jones, who having shown his personality and his football ability in getting messages onto the pitch and looking to improve things, the second game he's up in the stand, and after that he seems to be confined to the bench and not coming off it at all to get anything onto the pitch. And so has he just been told to shut up, sit down, shut up, don't get involved? But the fella I think he has had an impact early on when he first came in. And I would be inclined, probably, because he's got to know players, maybe he could do something about this. But at the moment, I think the players are recognising that there's a power struggle going on between he and Bruce, and you can never get anywhere in football when you've got that kind of thing going on. Not ever.
Okay, John, a lot of people commenting about your appearance on the Chronicle podcast. They said they never heard you as angry. You were really spitting feathers, and they've been reading your articles in the Chronicle as well, where you always shoot from the hip, which is passion because you're a supporter like we are. But
sure.
What's your take on the Bruce debacle? Because we're getting through to you know, the crunch time, and you know, Fulham are still picking up points. Newcastle aren't. These two games are massive, and you know, after these two games, it's anybody's really. It's who wants it the most.
I mean, if heaven forbid, but if we happen to lose to Wolves and then Fulham beat Crystal Palace on the next day, which is a distinct possibility, then on goal difference, we are in the bottom three. And once we go in the bottom three, I don't know if I can see us coming out of it. That is how crucial this match is at the weekend. I'm in despair about what's going on at my club. It's going on yet again. The whole Mike Ashley reign has been, bar one season when we fluked a fifth and then went immediately back to what we really are. It is, we are sitting here talking about, can we stay up? Last season we were talking about, can we stay up? Next season, if the same guy owns the club and we have a manager that's either Steve Bruce or someone like him, we'll be talking about, can we stay up? I am fed up to the back teeth of having 50,000 loyal Geordies who have supported from cradle to grave, and all we can have to look forward to is, if are we going to survive? And as far as Ashley's concerned, he's celebrating at the end of the season if we survive. We are wiping sweat off the brow thinking, thank God for that, and what are we going to do about it for next season? Answer, nothing under Mike Ashley, and we're in this situation again. And you know, I almost despair, because I look at that squad, and if that's current squad we have got are playing the rest of the season under Steve Bruce with those players we've got, then we are in massive trouble, because it's nowhere near good enough, that squad, in its reaction to the current setup within the club at management level with coaches and managers. It's a horrendous situation. What we want to happen and what will happen can be two totally different things. I don't think that come Saturday night, Steve Bruce would be sacked regardless of what the result is against Spurs. Therefore, I'm desperate to beat against Wolves. Therefore, I'm desperate to beat Wolves, because we have got to stay in this league so that if next season we have new owners to start us off and a new manager, we've got a real chance. If we think that we're dare to gamble on going down and coming up automatically in one season, like we've done twice recently, that's far too big a risk to take, because it might well not happen. So we've got to win this weekend, but it's easier, boys, to talk about who we don't want in the team against Spurs than who we do. It's easier to say we don't want either fullback to play. It's easier to say we don't want Shelby to play, because he's yesterday's man, big time. He has gone backwards so much, he's like Michael Jackson doing the moonwalk. And we don't want Joe Linton playing up front, because, by God, we cannot find him. We don't know quite where he is. So it's easier to say who we don't want than who we do want. And that's a frightening situation for a club if this standard. I don't think if we lose to Wolves, I don't think Steve Bruce will get the sack. It's not a matter of whether he should or not. It's a matter of whether he would or not. If he did get the sack some way, I don't think we would bring in a new manager in terms of Rafa Benitez, Eddie Howe, etc., etc. I think we would have Graham Jones seeing the season out. So are we going to be a bit better off? When it's not going to be ideal. So we've got to try to stagger through and get results. That's all I can hope for, and I am desperate for us to beat Wolves, because I don't want any revival next season, boys, to be starting off in the Championship.
Although obviously we're struggling up front for goals, the big topic of conversation, Malcolm, between supporters on social media this week has been Dubravka and Darlow. In fact, for the last few weeks, I think most people felt that Darlow was worthy of his opportunity to stay in goal. after the great service that he'd done whilst Dubravka was injured. But Dubravka is back now. He's fit. If we're to believe the headlines, he's not very happy about sitting on the bench. There's been a few mistakes by Darlow now. Is it time to bring Dubravka back in at the weekend for for the next couple of games at least, to see how he does?
Well, I certainly thought that Darlow had a real off night against Manchester United. Certainly a couple of goals. When I was a manager, I absolutely hated to see a goalkeeper get beat on his near post. And that happened to Darlow a couple of times against Man U. I had the Republic of Ireland international goalkeeper in my side, and I saw him get beat at the near post a couple of times, and I dropped him. And he said, you can't do that. You've just sold the reserve keeper to Brighton. He said, who are you going to put in? I said, I'm putting in the kid from the juniors. I said, because he doesn't get beat on his near post. And the lad came in and was absolutely brilliant, surprised everybody, and it pulled Jerry Payton, the Irish goalkeeper. It really caused him to rethink his whole game, and he came back a much better goalkeeper for it. I think Darlow has been absolutely terrific. But Newcastle United are in a situation that crucial players in crucial situations cannot make crucial mistakes. And Darlow, last week, John, we actually had this conversation, didn't we? And I went for Darlow, you went for Dubravka. But I'm prepared to switch over into John's camp with Dubravka, because a goalkeeper, you can't get beat on your near post. You really can't. And that's happened with Darlow. It will be a harsh decision on him, and I really do think that he's done absolutely brilliant. But at the moment, you can't take chances that the very best side who has got the greatest chance of getting a win against Wolves must be the side that plays against them. And so if it's Dubravka to go in goal, then okay, fine, I'm with it. And I would personally want to see a number of changes from the side that played against Manchester United, because I don't think they certainly weren't capable of beating Man U, and I don't think that they're capable of beating Wolves. There's no real leadership in that side, and I've noticed that a couple of texts that have been sent in are talking of Richie. Richie does a terrific captain's job, whether he has the armband on his arm or not. And personally, I would want to see him back in the side. He'll G everybody up. He's a great influence in the side, and I think that in the time that he's not been in the side, things have gone very sadly downhill.
Yeah, I would agree. We seem to have lost John. He must have had some issue with his internet. Hopefully he'll be back, and just in time for you to leave, Malcolm.
He's got my gremlin.
He has. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about Steve Bruce's laughter as he went off the pitch. Now, it can be misconstrued, Mal, but there was a photo doing the rounds, obviously, of Steve Bruce walking off chatting with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer after they lost the game. Do you not think he should be a little bit more media savvy and wait and have an exchange of words and a bit of laughter, and till he gets out of the gaze of the cameras? Because he's got to be aware that the cameras are on him, and win, lose or draw, he's going to be the focus of attention, especially when he's at the bottom of the table struggling against a relegation again. Should he not have been a little bit more media savvy? Because that was the one thing that really annoyed Newcastle fans, probably more than the defeat, if I'm perfectly honest.
I don't think he's media savvy at all. Yes, he should be. To answer your question, he should be a lot more media savvy, but I don't think he is at all, and never has been. The situation that we're in, the last thing that Newcastle United supporters need to see at the end of a game where they've just got beat 3-1, where they had the game for the taking in the first half an hour, then he should be aware that to put the right message over, and that's not just verbally, that's the visual message as well. And yes, I think that, you know, I remember the actual shot, the camera shot of what people are talking about, and it did cross my mind. Do you care?
Yeah. Do
you, Steve Bruce? Do you care? You've come back to Man United where you had a huge amount of success, and was chatting away with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer almost as if he was still a part of Man United. And yes, that made me mad. And I can understand supporters being furious with Steve Bruce for that. Dreadful PR.
Yeah, it was dreadful PR. John seems to be struggling. I'm not sure whether we can hear John. Can we hear you, John, or have you disappeared again?
No, it seems to be frozen, doesn't it?
It's frozen, yes. It's not the best. It's not the best
he could
angle.
play fullback like that.
It's not the best angle of John either, is it? Now he's disappeared again. Let's talk a little bit about supporters coming back in after I've said thanks to the sponsors halfway through the show. So a big thank you to Spider VPN. The sponsorship is coming to an end this month, but they've agreed to stay on
logo.
They've agreed to stay on next month as well, which is great. It's a big shout out to them. qtechshop.co.uk as well, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend in Newcastle, who have been with us for a while now, and Jab Signature as well, the makers of our flyers. So a big shout out to all the sponsors tonight. Don't forget as well, you can also catch NUFC Matters on Spotify, iTunes and all your other podcast providers, all for free. And subscribe to the channel. Just click the little box on the right hand corner, and that's it. Subscribe for free. Hit the like button, hit the comment button, hit the share button. It all does us a big favour. And coming up at 7:30, part 2 of my interview with notorious inmate Charles Bronson. These recordings were done a few years ago now in Wakefield Prison, and I'm releasing them because Charlie has asked me to. So listen tonight about Charlie talking a little bit about his time inside with the great train robbers and some other well-known faces. So interesting guy to speak to. John, I think, is back and joining us. So John, you've got a little bit of catch up to do after playing around with Malcolm's internet.
I certainly have.
Dubravka and Darlow, where do you stand on that, mate?
Well, funny enough, we just touched on it on this program last week, Steve, and I hung my hat then on Dubravka while having all the sympathy in the world for Darlow, and having then watched Manchester United match play where I felt that Darlow was criminally beaten on his near post on the first goal. I think it is time for Dubravka to come back. He was the player of the year last year. Darlow's done much better than I've expected this season, but his form has significantly dipped, and I would definitely bring Dubravka back on Saturday. Because we need a result. We've got to restore a little bit of confidence. We're talking about the vulnerability of the back four, because I don't feel Lascelles is playing anywhere near what he needs to play. And there's a case there for Fernandez playing if he's good and well, which we're led to believe he could well be. And we've got troubles in the fullback position. So I would go with the keeper. Without a shadow of doubt, I would have Dubravka back in.
Okay, the other question I was asking
Steve,
Malcolm was... Oh, yeah, go on, Malcolm.
Oh, sorry, Steve. I I'd just seen a couple of minutes ago a text that was sent in, and I just thought that I might make a comment on it, and it's do you think Steve Bruce will play his best team? I don't think Steve Bruce knows what his best team is. I don't think he's got an idea on that, and he chops and changes all of the while. There's no settled procedure whatsoever, and I really don't think he knows. I don't. The fact that he plays Joe Linton so consistently, and if he's not playing, then he comes on as a sub, and it's at Old Trafford to put him outside right was utter nonsense, and I could have told him before the game just what he could have expected, and sure enough, it happened in its entirety, or rather, nothing happened. No threat came from there whatsoever. He didn't take part in the game. And when you think Joe Linton and behind him Kraft, my God, that has got to be the worst right side of any Premiership club that's ever existed. And so I honestly do not think that Steve Bruce is actually capable of putting a strong side out, because he doesn't know what a strong he doesn't know how to make that strong side together, doesn't know how to put it together, and I don't think he can look ahead at the next opponents and say, okay, these are the guys that can cause that team trouble, and this is how we need to put a side together, and get the players ready in their mind to go at the weaknesses of Wolves. I just don't see any of that happening whatsoever, and I see players looking around as if to say, "Oh, what the hell's going on?" You know, we're sort of we're totally underinformed, just not informed at all about what to expect, and they're just going out blind all the time.
Yeah, I would agree. John Mitchison, thanks for this. He says, glimpse into the future. Newcastle lose to Dunstan in the Vars final. Joe Linton scores his 10 career goal in 400 appearances, and Bruce is still saying it's a work in progress and positives. Very good, John. I like it.
I tell you what, we've got something to look forward to then, have we?
Yeah, we have. Well, it'll be the FA Trophy, not the Vars for Dunstan, because I don't see Dunstan going down. John, no. The other question asked was about Steve Bruce. I just said to Malcolm before that the fans probably weren't as annoyed at the result at the weekend as they were Steve Bruce walking down the touchline smiling with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Oh. I mean, what was he thinking of? Just not media savvy, is he?
No, yeah, you've hit the nail absolutely on the head. As a PR exercise, that was horrendous. Whatever happens immediately after a game, you know that the camera's on you. There's absolutely no question about that whatsoever. It doesn't matter what Solskjaer says to you. You have just lost for the 12th time in the last 16 matches. You don't crack a joke or smile at something nice Solskjaer's saying to you at all, because this ain't a game we're playing in the sense of a bit of fun. This is deadly, deadly serious. And I know how people have leapt on it since, but when I saw it at the time, I cringed, because I thought, is this for real? Are you joking? And it doesn't matter what defense you come up with and say, well, this is what really happened. The fact was you were walking from your dugout to the tunnel with the opposing manager, and you look as if you're having a fun little cozy conversation with two pals, and you've just lost the 12th game out of the last 16. that was a walking disaster PR for Steve Bruce, and it naturally leapt on by fans, but who are so distraught. And of course, to do that at Manchester United, which a lot of Newcastle fans say you might be a Geordie, but your real club is Manchester United. So to do that at Manchester United made it even worse. When I saw it happen, I had a mixture of, are you stupid, and absolute anger because of what I just witnessed in the hour and a half that it preceded it. That was a PR disaster. But aren't we used with Mike Ashley and Newcastle United and generally, aren't we used to PR disasters? That is the one thing where Newcastle United are top of the league, is PR disasters.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it, and it's hopefully. I mean, David Reed keeps saying you can smile through adversity, but it's not the point, mate. It's not the point. Steve Bruce is is really just not screwing his loaf on, I don't think, and we'll wait and see what happens at the weekend. Takeover talk has reared its head again, Mal. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, and a lot of people feeling that the ongoing situation with the new president of the United States, Joe Biden, and his clear dislike for MBS in Saudi, and there's going to be the revealing of some documentation to say that he's been involved in stuff, could bode badly for the takeover. I'm sure that it's just recycled stories, though. I mean, it's nothing new, and we haven't heard anything for a while now with regards to the takeover. It's gone very quiet. When we don't know whether arbitration has begun, whether it's delayed. We haven't got much of a clue on that. For me, I've put it at the back of my mind, Malcolm. I would suggest others do the same until we hear an announcement either way.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the most important business right now is to ensure the Newcastle United stay in the Premiership for next season, and then we can always see what happens come the summer. Nothing's going to happen between now and the end of the season, I don't think, with regards to a takeover. But what does happen between now and the end of the season could leave Newcastle in a good and strong position for next season, or in a nightmare situation of being in the Championship. And I saw a question that if Newcastle were to go down, would they spring straight back to the Premiership as they did after the last two relegations under Mike Ashley? And this time, no, I don't think so. I seriously do not think so. In fact, I watch a number of Championship games, and I think there are a lot of better sides right now, this moment, a lot of better sides in the Championship than Newcastle can put out.
Yeah,
one of the interesting things was what ran along the bottom of the screen there, Steve, while Malcolm was talking, that if we do go, I think it was Alan Thompson was the lad mentioning it, if we do go down next season, in an effort to come back up, we can have Newcastle Sunderland derbies again, because Sunderland with new owners coming up via the playoffs, so which is a distinct possibility. Glory be. Can you imagine Mike Ashley stays and Steve Bruce takes Newcastle to Sunderland next season and loses 5-1 like he took Sunderland to Newcastle and lost 5-1 when Chris Hughton, and by the way, that got Chris Hughton a sack about 3 weeks later. Ironic, isn't it? But let's not go down that road. This is nightmare time. We have got to stay up. And if we are going to stay up, it starts Saturday. It doesn't start eventually. It doesn't. I am sick to my back teeth of being told at the end of another defeat on camera, well, there's positives to take out of that, For 45, 50 minutes, we look good. Yeah, matches last 90 minutes, not 45 or 50 minutes. There's positives to take out of that. We've got two corners, I am sick to death of being told there's positives in 12 defeats. No, there isn't, son. Wake up, smell the danger, and do something about it. It is, we live on what might happen in the next game. You know what happens in the next game? We lose. That's what happens in the next game, and that's got to stop, and it's got to stop now, and it's got to stop with Wolves this weekend. If I am sick of being told, well, we'll lose to Chelsea and we'll lose to Manchester United, and it's almost said, well, we expect to lose against them. They're good sides. No, we don't just lose to them. We lose to Sheffield United. We lose to Crystal Palace. We lose to Brentford in the League Cup. We're held at home by Fulham, who have 10 men. We lose to the bad sides as well as to the good sides. And Wolves are not one of the top 6 sides, and they're not a bad side. But there's not going to be many more opportunities. If we are going to wait for a side to be nailed on to give us 3 points, where's that side? We played Sheffield United. They hadn't won a game all season, and they beat us. We are afraid of every side we're going to play. We have got to start winning, not drawing. Draws are okay, but they're not good enough. If Fulham had been able to win all the draws in the occasional win, they would already be above us and out of sight. They haven't been able to do that. Although they've only lost 1 of their last 7 in the Premier League compared with the one we are currently on. We have got to do something about it, and we've got to do it now. Not next week, the game after that, or the game after that. We have got to do it against Wolves. Not wait for West Brom, not hope that something magic's going to happen. That we see a couple of positives, like we get a couple of corners, and we've had games this season where we've had corners and the teams broke away and scored against us. It is an absolute nonsense.
It is. But John, if you're going to win games, you have to score goals. To score goals, you have to take shots and get them on target, and as many as possible, not just 1 or 2 here and there. It's got to be a concerted effort. And I don't see that happening at all. I don't see a concerted effort going into matches that suggest that Newcastle might be able to win them. It's very, very frustrating. But at the same time, it's not helped when you've got Joe Linton on the right-hand side, Almiron running about through the middle, and St Maximin on the left-hand side. Who on earth came up with that one that could play at Old Trafford and win the game for Newcastle? I just absolutely. As soon as I saw it, my head dropped into my hands, and I could not believe it, and I just said Newcastle 0, and that was before a ball was kicked. I could not see Newcastle scoring.
Let's take this one from Life Goals. He's put this up a couple of times now. John, if the club stays up, which players would you build the side around, and which 5 players would you kick into the River Tyne?
Well, I would build the side around Callum Wilson and 4 new signings, and I would kick about 10 of them into the River Tyne. And the first one that I would kick in is Joe Linton. Then I would kick in Kraft. Then I would kick in Shelby. Do we need to kick in many more? There's no question about that. Outside of the goalkeeper and Callum Wilson, you would hope that you could get something out of San Maximum and something out of Almiron, whether it was from the bench or starting. But it's about who they sign. And it's about, and here we come to another problem. Regardless of who manager is and perhaps who the owner is, who decides who we're going to sign? We know it's Nixon, but if we were supposed to be thrilled in the summer that we'd improved the side so much, and we did with Wilson. But we certainly didn't improve the side with Hendrick. We certainly didn't improve the side with Lewis. And we certainly didn't improve the side with Fraser, who doesn't start and seems now as if he's as dischuffed with life as Gale is. I mean, he looks like a well-smacked backside when he runs onto the field. And he owes this club because he hasn't started enough games and he hasn't produced anything like the form that he produced a couple of seasons back when he was playing with Wilson down at Bournemouth. I mean, we need a total clear out of that. There's absolutely no question whatsoever. And if anybody went outside of the goalkeeper, the centre forward, and possibly in the squad, St. Maximum and Almiron, nobody would complain, you know. And people like Shelby, what on earth are we doing? We've got Shelby, who's yesterday's man, and we've got Joe Linton, who's nobody's man. Where we're going?
Brilliant, John. I couldn't have summed that up better myself. What about you, Mal? What's your take on that? Anybody you would keep and anybody you would get rid of?
At the moment, Wilson and Dubravka, certainly. I think Darlow's worth keeping. I like Richie. I think he's got a great attitude to it, and I think he really does get other people going as well. St. Maximin, he's the kind of player you should be building a side around. But what's happening is we've got St. Maximin, so let's not bother at all. Just leave it to him. That's not the way to do it. It really isn't. I watched Manchester City, and there wasn't one player who stood out. They all did the same job equally, the same amount of running, the same amount of movement, and yet they were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And there is no reliance on one player. You can't do that in the Premiership, and yet Steve Bruce seems to think that it's okay to do it, and it's not. I really think, because we're stuck with what we've got for the moment, between now and the end of the season, I think that what we've got to do, or what's got to happen within Newcastle United, is they really have got to learn to work together. Everybody. I still think that there is a split on the coaching bench. I really do. And I think that Steve Bruce has told the fella, you take a back seat, you don't get involved. And I think that's, if that's happened, it's absolutely crazy. It really is. And if it hasn't happened, then why is he sitting on the bench? Why is he not taking part? Why is he not getting involved as the game's going on? The game changes, and sometimes you can see it better from the side. And so as the game changes, you need to just make some slight alterations, maybe. But nobody's doing it at Newcastle. Nobody at all. And 11 players go out on the field, and they're sort of just left to sink or swim out there.
Let's look ahead to the weekend's game and talk about the striker situation. Obviously, Wilson's still out. John, who would you play? Tom Dixon asks, who would you play up front? You know, there's not many options, but what would you do you think, to get the goals to try and, you know, help us get away from that relegation trapdoor?
There isn't many options, because the brutal truth of the matter is there's nobody adequate enough to do the job. That's the simple answer, but that's no answer at all, because as we've already said, we are stuck with what we've got. If his attitude was right, I would go with Dwight Gale, played central, because he can score goals. I don't know whether we can redeem the Dwight Gale situation, because I am utterly convinced that he is beyond redemption, that he is fed up with what's gone on, that he's resigned to the fact that he's not going to be given chances, that his contract's up and he's going to have a last hurrah with a decent signing on fee and go and play for a club that appreciates him. If he was in the right frame of mind, it would be him. I don't know that he is in the right frame of mind playing at this club under this manager. So that is a real problem. Ironically, and I've trumpeted about it before, and I don't think it carries much favour with fans, but in a right situation, I would go with Fraser, Almiron and San Maximum in the way that we went with Keegan, Waddle and Beardsley. But again, we come back to exactly the same problem. Fraser, to me, his body language is as bad for whatever reason as is Gale's body language. The biggest thing I know is that I wouldn't go with Joe Linton. That's the biggest thing I know. So do you go with Andy Carroll? I can see the advantage of that in terms of fighting people and making your presence felt. You've got to play a certain way with him in the side. It is a major problem, and that's why I know what's wrong with Almiron, like he can be a headless chicken. I know what's wrong with San Maximum, like he can be a moody player, he's a luxury player. But we're going to have to gamble, you know. We are going to have to gamble on somebody stepping up to the plate. And the two people that's got an outside chance of stepping up the plate for me are Almiron and San Maximum. Outside of that, another thing I'm worried about, when you saw Willock in his first game against Southampton, he looked like a breath of fresh air. He arrived late in the box, he scored a good goal. You think he's going to provide a goal score. Within 3 games, he's given away a penalty in his own penalty area, and body language is telling me he's wondering what on earth is going on here. Yeah. We've got to get him doing again what he's capable of doing as a young lad. It is really, really frightening. And I think a mix and match, a threesome up front of people that have got a chance of playing might be the best shot we're coming off. But to be truthful, I absolutely despair of the whole situation. Yet, we've got to think that we'll beat Everton home and away. We've got to think that we'll beat Southampton with 9 men. We've got to think positively and reason on no than Southampton, certainly than Everton, and give this a real crack on. Everybody should walk off that pitch and their shirts be wringing wet with sweat. At the moment, there's about 4 shirts that can go immediately into next week's basket because there's not a mark on them. And that is not good enough for Newcastle United. We have got to do it now, because we then go West Brom, we then go Aston Villa, maybe without Jack Grealish, and we then go. We want to get a better run than that, because life's hard in the Premier League. You can make out a case why we win any, but we've got to make out a case, or who says in that dressing room, and Jones says, or Lascelles says, we want leaders. We want Bruce to step up. We want Lascelles to step up. We want senior pros to step up. Will they? They haven't so far, but by God, we need it now.
Yep, we do. Don't forget, we do have a new date for our Evening with Newcastle Legends. Myself, Malcolm and John Gibson will be there. Steve Howie, Liam O'Brien, Lee Clark, John Beresford, Darren Peacock, Rob Lee, Kevin Scott, Tommy Wright and Keith Gillespie will all be joining us at the Tyne Theatre on Westcott Road. You can get your tickets on Groupon now, so dive onto Groupon and get your tickets on there. Should be a cracking night. I think we can confidently say there will be some events going ahead by September, one would hope, with the good news that we've had with regards to COVID. Let's look ahead then to the game on Saturday, 8 o'clock kickoff, live on Sky Sports. Team news obviously will be more apparent tomorrow, but we do know that Federico Fernandez could return to the squad after missing the last 8 games through injury. Manquillo, Wilson and Shaw remain unavailable, although there are positive signs that Manquillo and Wilson are on the road to recovery. The fitness of Joe Linton is still awaited. Of course, Steve Bruce will be having his press conference tomorrow, so we should hear more then. And as we've already discussed on the programme, it is claimed that Martin Dubravka will be recalled at the expense of Carl Darlow. Now, Wolves, the visitors, they will be looking to arrive at St James's Park, looking to make it 3 Premier League wins in a row for the first time this season. And essentially their squad news will come out tomorrow. Mike Dean, he will be in charge of the game as referee, and Kevin Friend will be on the VAR. So, John, come to you first, mate, because I think we've just lost Malcolm. What's your take on that game at the weekend, and what's your prediction?
Well, Wolves hit a real rocky spell as Jimenez, because he was a quality player up front. They've had to readjust the style of play because he's out. William Jose has come in to play he is an orthodox target man centre forward, where Jimenez is a clever player. Traore's bombing again. They're beginning to get results. It is a difficult time for us, but they're all difficult times for us at the moment. Wolves are in a good run. We are in a downward spiral. It is horrendous. 12 defeats and 16. You've got to say it's now or never. Can we do it? Well, it's not a matter of can we. It's a matter of must we. We must do it. My head tells me that it will be yet another 1-1. That has been a result that's been nailed on in these two, Steve, of recent times. And my head tells me it's a 1-1. My heart tells me we've got to win. If we can't keep it sheet, then we've got to win 2-1. And you say, well, how can we get 2 goals? Well, we got 3 against Southampton the last time. So perhaps we can just manage it. You notice how I've never mentioned the defeat there, because that's cutting the throat time and all holding hands and jumping off the time. So we can't contemplate that one. My head tells me it'll be a 1-1 draw. That is not good enough for Newcastle. Need to win, and if we're going to win, it's going to be something like 2-1.
Okay, Paul Gibson says Kevin Friend's on VAR. That means Wolves will get 2 penalties and a red card against us. And now Wayne...
yes,
Wayne,
how on earth did that fella get a name, Friend?
Yeah, he's anything
he's
but...
certainly not our friend.
Wayne Hurricks as well, he says on Twitter, he can't comment on YouTube, I don't know why, mate, but he says, I would go Caroline Anderson, hopefully a big Duncan Bellamy type like selection. Yeah, good idea, good suggestion. Anything is possible at the weekend. We never know what Steve Bruce is going to come up with. I'm going to go for 1-1 or a boring 0-0. It's going to be one of those two against Wolves. I do fancy us to get... a win at West Brom. You heard it here first. Internet problems haven't stopped. We're getting through the full show. Malcolm, 1856 tonight. We'll have to start putting something on, I think, a winning prize for people who guessed that. But John managed to get back in and do a great job. And lots of comments, John, saying, thanks very much. Well done, John. And people love your rants, John. So they just love the fact that you're you. I think that's the best I can say.
Well, I do appreciate that, and you do get carried away, but that's us Geordies, aren't we? That the one thing we've got consistently is passion. We would just love to see some of that passion beyond the park.
Yeah, we would do. David Reed, again, for the whole night, has asked us the same question. We have tried to get the answer. I think what you've been told, David, is that most people would find, Steve Bruce leaving a reason to celebrate. And when you say who would come in, I think we all have agreed that it's probably going to be Graham Jones who comes in. Who would I like? Well, I would love somebody who knows what they're doing. It's as simple as that. I would love a Jose Mourinho or a Pochettino or an Arsene Wenger or an Alex Ferguson. Somebody who actually comes in and knows exactly what they're doing. That's who I would like. Who are we going to get? Probably Joe Kinnear. On that note, I'll see you all next week. Take care. Take care, John.
Take care. God bless. Thanks a lot, mate. Bye.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you.